Hi, on behalf of myself and Team Long Division, welcome to LDTV. This episode is looking at the state of live music right now in June 2020. I spoke to some of the organisations that we've worked with for many years, but I also tracked down those that we've never worked with, but I know they're working really hard to support musicians and artists right now. I want to find out what the state of things was now, but also what the future might hold. Those partners include Help Musicians, the Association of Independent Festivals, Production Park, Bodies and Music Leeds. We know too that there are a lot of artists and performers out there who are struggling right now, not sure what to do or how to move forward. So we've spoken to a range of professionals who can help you with things like getting on the radio, developing your brand, working with press, applying to record labels and also managing your mental health. These come in bite-sized 5-minute chunks on this show, but if you like what you see, please go to our YouTube channel to find out more. This episode is to raise money for Help Musicians, and they're going to be the first ones that we speak to. But everyone involved in LDTV, myself, all the contributors, the people behind the camera, they're all doing this for free. If you are able to donate, it can make a huge difference. For now, kick back, grab a brew, and let's talk about music. First of all, I spoke to Lucy at Help Musicians and asked them what challenges they're facing now.
Well, the performance sector's been so hard hit. I think that, what we're seeing at the moment is that the impact of the virus has, of course, it's changed the kind of immediate future.
Mm-hmm.
Whether as a musician, even myself as a music lover, kind of thinking about what does the summer look like. But I think also the potentially longer term implications for venues and artists alike is going to be really challenging. And I think the impact on musicians at the moment is just unprecedented. Their ability to work, their ability to perform and to teach as well. I think, so many musicians make their income not just in the live sector, but absolutely that's been it's taken such a huge hit. We're working closely with other organisations across the industry to try and help relieve the financial pressure that musicians are facing at the moment. Where we can, that's our primary mission at the moment.
These conversations are hard out because it's changing every week, so it's hard to certainly think about the future. And a lot of the people I've been talking to, we keep saying it's, we're unsure about the future, and the uncertainty seems to be the most difficult thing. I guess looking forward, I don't feel that we're on a path at the moment to an end point or a solution or whatever that is. What perhaps needs to change in terms of how, I don't know, as a society, as a government, as a country, how we're kind of approaching this problem? What would you like to see change?
Given the sheer magnitude of this situation, I think only the government can provide what musicians will really, really require to survive the months ahead. From Help Musicians' perspective, we're supporting the music industry more widely in that campaign for that meaningful help to be provided.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that level, and I think a charity like Help Musicians can do so much to help, and we do, and that's kind of, it's an organisation I'm really proud to work for. And in the last couple of months particularly, I think the way we've been able to support and the ways that we're continuing to support musicians on an individual level is really effective, really impactful and really powerful. But I think, that bigger picture, I think that, that's where the government support is, for that support to be meaningful and far-reaching. I think that's got to be the priority.
For any musicians that are perhaps watching this, maybe at a variety of levels in their career, you mentioned a website just then, but is there any kind of places that of advice either through yourselves or others that you'd like to kind of signpost?
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely Help Musicians. Our programme continues to kind of be developed in response to the ongoing nature. As you said, it's constantly changing, and so are we in terms of how we're looking at what that support will look like over over the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and then kind of well into the future, sort of 12 to 18 months on. I think from a funding perspective, my area in the creative program, our funds will continue throughout the year. So, and our wider support for musicians around health and wellbeing, that's a core of what we do as well. So our website's a really great place to find advice, to look at blogs. In terms of wider funding, we have a funding wizard on our website. So you can find out all about our funds on our website, but then on this page, you can also research other funding which is available. The coronavirus musicians.info website, that kind of central hub. We have a 24-hour listening ear service called Music Minds Matter, which is there for anyone working in music and anyone working in the industry who needs support. So that can be called. The number for that is 0808 802 8008. And there are so many people working to help musicians through this time, but I think what the organisations that spring to mind would be Music Support, BAPAM, who are the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine, so from a kind of clinical, physical and psychological perspective, BAPAM. Others like the Samaritans as well. I think some of those core agencies, the support is there, but it is about reaching out and taking those steps to reach them.
Now, Production Park is a huge organisation in Wakefield. It's where the likes of Jay-Z, Coldplay, Kaiser Chiefs go to rehearse the technical aspects of their world tours. And Production Park have been a huge supporter of Long Division Festival over the years, especially through their education arm, Backstage Academy. I want to speak to them about what they felt were the biggest threats to the music industry right now.
There's been a threat that's been around for a long time, which is kind of the closure of the grassroots venues. I mean, this is something which has been creeping up on us for a number of years, and everyone's aware of it, but it's been really easy just to kind of turn a blind eye to it because everyone's been so busy just cracking on with their, daily, monthly, yearly schedules. Coming from my experience as a tour manager, production manager, I spent many, many years in splitter vans going through the grassroots sort of level of the industry, bringing in bands through that level, some of which now, are kind of arena stadium level bands, and kind of taking for granted that journey where we all learn, not just the artists on stage, but all the people around the stage, or the support crews, and that we all learn our fare, at these sweaty little dives. And as much as they're pain in the ass and hard work, they're also, absolutely pivotal, absolutely critical. So I still think, even with the COVID-19 situation, which has kind of brought us to our knees, it's only amplified the fact that these venues, which were never money-making machines, are a real danger of disappearing. And without them there, we're putting a sell-by date on the industry, because there literally won't be anywhere near the amount of artists coming through the machine to be able to play these big production stages, because they won't be able to play, they won't have any experience. And I think it's just amplified that fact now. So it's without doubt the biggest threat to the music industry, and probably beyond. So it's something we really need to look into.
It's interesting because I've been speaking to a few people today, and one of the questions I've been asking is, if you want to help a band, is it the best thing to buy their record? I'm sure they'd be really pleased to sell a record for 15 quid or whatever. But is it actually looking at the bigger picture? Should we be looking at the venues and the places where those bands could play? Is that a more effective long-term way to support bands?
Well, I mean, there's no silver bullet. There's no one answer that's going to solve the problem. But all of the above, really, everything. You've got to support the artists directly, because they need to make some sort of financial, compensation in order to carry on. But once they're assuming they're secure, and you've got them with a bit of money in their pocket, at least enough so they don't have to spend all their time working a crap job that makes them want to sleep the rest of their lives, they still need somewhere to go. So as well as supporting the artists directly, I'm sure, like we all did when we were kids, the kids of today don't really see going to the local venue and watching a band as a normal thing. It may be a bit more of a specialist thing because ticket prices have had to go up, but supporting local venues is as important as supporting, grassroots bands. It's all part of the same ecosystem that needs to be nurtured.
What's your experience of venues in Europe? My not direct experience, but through speaking to artists, is that the impression is that Europe always kind of looks after artists a little bit better. They get paid better. There seems to be more of an infrastructure in Europe. Is there something that we could learn there that comes off the back of this situation, maybe?
100%, and not just Europe. I mean, I'd say pretty much, anywhere else in the world, really, anywhere else in the world that applies to the music industry. This country has a very self-destructive kind of nature in lots of different ways, and it certainly does with venues. Venues over here, the government don't treat them as kind of a nurturing kind of service to an industry which pays huge amounts of dividends back to them. It's quite the opposite. They treat them as hostile environments almost. That as we all know, that the situation with business rates on buildings is out of control, and it's kind of the death of the high street. Well, that really applies to grassroots venues. They're very much kind of get hit hard by the actual building rates. I don't know for sure exactly how it works in Europe and other parts of the world with things like that nature, like building rates, but the small venues are treated as kind of community hubs. They're really looked after, supported by everyone. You take bands over there, and you don't just sort of go in and play the shows and then go. You're welcomed into a family environment, and a lot of times you stay in the same buildings. They feed you, and it's very, very, it's a very safe and comfortable kind of society out there, and it's treated as a very valuable resource by the communities.
A big success story in Wakefield over the last 12 to 18 months has been Bodies, who promote monthly shows to critical acclaim. I spoke to Emily from Bodies for some local insight. Hi Emily.
Hi team.
How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay, yeah.
Good. You're looking well.
Thanks.
What a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Festival weather.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thanks for chatting to me and putting your life in danger to do so. I appreciate that. So obviously I want to chat to you a little bit about Bodies and get a kind of Wakefield perspective on gigs and stuff. I guess, obvious question, but I guess you're missing doing Bodies and live music in Wakefield.
Yeah, for sure. So up until the start of lockdown, we'd been doing gigs in Wakefield for just over a year, and they were going really well. I'm definitely missing it, but there's a bigger thing in play, so it's okay. I think I was so chuffed that they were going so well, we did 3 at the beginning of the year. They were just so ace. I feel like we kind of have gone on pause on a real high, so that's some comfort.
There's going to be a hunger though when they come back, but I don't know, do you worry it might be tricky to get it up and running again because people are going to be nervous about the live music experience and stuff? How do you think you're going to approach it?
I think one of the benefits that we probably have is it was always quite a familiar crowd and quite a comfortable setting anyway, and they weren't like, even a popular gig, it was never a big gig, because that's not what we were trying to do. We weren't ever trying to get like massive names and stuff and like cram out a massive venue. So I think it could mean that smaller gigs like ours do have more of a place maybe, but we just have to be really careful. I mean, there's loads of questions even, I suppose, like what venues will we use? Well,
this is the thing, because in a sense, because you're not a venue, you're just a promoter, you can go back to this when you're ready. It's not like you need to open the doors and get selling beer and all that, so you have got that kind of benefit of time. But what do you think, like, what are you going to be looking for to what's going to make you feel comfortable to start? It's not putting a gig on, it's start booking gigs, isn't it? However many months in advance.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. When lockdown started, at first I thought, this is loads of opportunity to listen to loads of music, book some stuff, start some conversations. And I think that because I didn't want to get my hopes up and I didn't want to re-cancel anything, and I didn't want anyone to feel like they had to do something they weren't comfortable with. I've actually taken a complete break. I think what it'll need for me to go back to putting on gigs, I think I'm just going to be watching, seeing what venues are doing, seeing what other people are doing. You know, maybe it's something that starts outside, maybe it's something that starts really small but we broadcast it. I'm not sure, but I'm not going to rush anything, because I think the thing that was nice about Bodies is it sort of filled a gap that Wakefield had, which was really nice, which was that I didn't feel that I could go to as many gigs in Wakefield as I wanted to. So by putting on a few gigs a month, suddenly there was, like, you know, twice as many indie gigs I wanted to go to. Until people are doing that, I don't feel like I'm going to be left behind. So I'm happy to just wait until it's the right time.
I guess the flip of what I've just said is, you know, you're a promoter, not a venue, so it would be quite easy for you to go, oh, do you know what, this is too stressful, I'm going to stop doing that. And then the Wakefield would have really lost something, because there's not many people like you doing that. Is there any, you know, is there any way that Wakefield or the kind of gig going audience or anything could support you to kind of ensure that you're going to keep doing this stuff? Because it is, you know, from Long Division's point of view, it's really important.
Yeah, thanks. I think, to be honest, I enjoyed it so much, and because it went so well, I have really missed it, but I do feel really patient about when it's coming back. So I don't think there's any chance that we're not coming back.
Good.
Mainly because I'm about to get some trainers made with the Bodies logo on. So
it's a big commitment.
So yeah, exactly. I'm going to have the shoes. So
have you, excuse me, have you given any thought to what socially distanced gigs might look like? Would you even consider, like, by coincidence, we're stood next to a massive church? Would something like, you know, 60 people spread in a massive space, would that work, or is that just not Bodies?
To be honest, like, we've always been happy to use any venue in Wakefield as long as it felt right for the setting. So if it means that we move to bigger venues but have the same crowd, obviously there's the thing of, like, financial viability. The books don't always balance with things like that, but I think if that's what it takes to get things started and have people feel confident before we can move somewhere smaller, then it might be something I'm happy to do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to. I think there's potential for, like, quite quirky, interesting,
I mean, that's
gigs.
the thing, isn't it? I think Wakefield's got that like history of trying different things and being a bit weird, because we don't always have like a perfect on paper venue for all of us to hire all the time and put gigs on. We've always had to be, like, with all the Long Division venues and stuff, and, you know, lots of different gigs, we've had to try different things because there's different limitations in, like, a lot of the venues. So I think Wakefield's well placed. Like, I think we're inventive enough. I think good stuff will happen.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Emily. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dean.
Bye.
Nice to see you.
Next up, we had a chat with our good friends, the record label Come Play With Me. For bands applying to a record label or a festival or funding, it can be really tricky. So we explored what we look for in the bands that we work with.
We're really looking for evidence of, well, first of all, good quality music, which goes without saying, but then evidence of ambition and drive and how much the band is going to work with us. Because there's always that kind of misunderstanding that when you work with a label, it's like, or even when you work with a manager, or you work with a festival, great, you know, I can kick back now, you're going to take charge of that for me. And it's just making sure, you know, we're identifying an artist or a band who's going to just work really, really hard with us.
Is there any kind of common mistakes that you found in applications? For me, this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but some artists put too much information in there. That really bothers me. When you've got to spend 10 to 15 minutes reading through a bio, that's not right for me. That can be a real kind of negative, and you feel bad sometimes because obviously the band really cares and has put a lot of effort in, but it can have a negative effect sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, often shows have got a lot to say, but often I think common mistakes as well as that, I think, is regurgitating the press release. It's like, if I want to see that, I can go and find that information probably online anyway. I mean, the obvious one is just not leaving links live. So, we always say to, I'm sure it's the same for you, if you're going to send us a link, you need to make sure it's live for 4 to 6 weeks after to give us a chance to judge it. Because there's nothing worse than you're really into an artist, you really want to hear that new track, and it's like, oh, they've just moved their SoundCloud around, it's not there anymore now.
Yeah, definitely. How important for you guys are socials, like how active they are on socials, how many followers, are those kind of things important for you?
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, in and of itself, of course, social media numbers aren't meaningless, because they obviously you want evidence of people that have got engaged fans, so fans that are going to come along and buy tickets or are going to download the music or buy the merch. But it is one of the best indicators we have. So there have been occasions when we've been really, really into an artist and the judges have really loved them and everything was good. But then we realise they haven't actually said anything on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram for the last 6 weeks. And you start questioning, well, do they still exist? Are they still a live band? Do they care? And it starts sowing seeds of doubt. If we start working together, will they promote this with us, or are they going to go quiet again? So yeah, it is important for that reason.
I don't know if it probably is relevant for you guys. It's just doing research as well. So there's quite a number of applications I get, which are just, they shouldn't have even bothered because they're the wrong thing for us. And I feel like they've wasted their time, wasted my time. And
well, that's the best advice, I think. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice, I think, across the board. Whether you're applying for a festival, you're applying for Come Play Me, you're applying for funding bids, is I think so few people take the time to care about what is it that you're looking for? What is it that Come Play Me wants? What is it the Long Division wants? And, you read these applications that will often tell you about how they're looking to develop their sound and how, I'm really keen to get into this studio and work with this producer, and, it'd be really great if we could headline, insert the name of the biggest club in your town. And that's all great, but it's kind of like, yeah, but you've got to think about what we're looking to get out of it. And it's the same for funders. It's, they're looking to make, if they're looking to invest in an artist, they want to make sure they're going to get their money back. And like I said before, you're going to work hard for it. So it's great to have those ambitions, those lofty ambitions, but think about what the other person wants from you as well. It's the same for you. If you're booking for Long Division, you want a coherent bill, right?
Yeah. I mean, but to be fair, sometimes I will take a punt on something quite odd, because that's the difference. We've got the benefit of booking 80 to 100 artists. If there's something that there is still an element of personal choice. If me or one of the teams just like, oh, this is like weird but cool, we
that
can go for it.
Yeah, that shines through when you're doing it. Because I mean, without naming names, there are some festivals where you kind of feel like, okay, you've taken the name at the top of the roster and you've taken a lot of the rest of that agent's roster, but you kind of feel with Long Division, yeah, you can see you've taken a punt and you've dug around and you've looked under some stones and you've got some interesting names coming through.
Yeah, I think, a big thing as well, if that application is referencing, like you kind of said, referencing things that we know, like if they say we've been played on BBC Introducing, it's just a tiny little, it increases that up by 1%. Oh, well, we work with them, I'm interested. If they say we've done something with Come Play With Me or whatever, it's almost like, it's not like name dropping, but it's just displaying that you've got a bit of a network and a connection. But I also appreciate, for some artists, that can feel like a really difficult thing to break through and to tap into. So I do massively get that frustration some artists have.
Yeah, it feels like that you're asking them to brag, like you say, to name drop. But it is really, it's just, we all trust other people. And if you know that Emily Pilbeam or Christian Carlisle or somebody's played them on Introducing, or you've booked them on Long Division, yeah, it's just an extra bit of kudos, and somebody else has really been into them that you respect.
Great, I think that's all useful stuff. And I think, like, as well, the other thing I always say, I don't know if you'd feel the same, but my door's always open. If a band wants to drop me an email, not at the point of the year where I'm incredibly busy booking stuff, but maybe like at another point of the year saying, we're wanting to get ourselves together, have you got any help, any advice, can you offer any help? I'm always happy to like chat to bands about that stuff.
Yeah, no, totally. We've actually got a clinic as well that we run, which is joint between Come Play Me and Music Leeds. And yeah, people can always sign up for a slot there. They can drop any of the team a line. Yeah, always doors open.
Brilliant. Nice one. All right. Thanks, Tony. That's great.
Radio is another really important avenue for artists. At Long Division, we love working with BBC Introducing, so we asked Zenner to put some tips together about getting your music heard.
Hey LDTV, I'm Zenner from Amazing Radio and XS Manchester, where I present. I produce at BBC Introducing West Yorkshire, and I also work on the BBC Introducing in Manchester show as well. So I like to think I know quite a lot about radio. I'm going to give you 5 radio tips. Now, firstly, tailor your tracks for radio. Swear edit, yes, we can't always play the tracks that one extra can play, so make sure you are uploading a radio edit. Also think about duration. If you're going to upload an 8-minute track, the likelihood of us playing it is very slim. If you have a radio edit, say 3.5 minute, 4-minute version, that's going to help. I mean, does length of song matter? Well, we only have 2 hours a week to play you, so ultimately if your song is a 3-minute or 2-minute track, yeah, it's going to have a better chance of getting played. So think about that. Also, lengthy intros. We're gonna look for something that just gets into it straight away, as you know, as much as you can do. We try and play all genres, obviously, but if you are a catchier song that is going to be literally getting someone's ear very quickly, it's going to be more beneficial for radio. So make sure you really think about tailoring your tracks for radio. Secondly, upload to all the uploaders, like bbc.co.uk/introducing. It doesn't cost you a thing. You can upload 2 tracks a month. I mean, you don't need to upload 2 tracks a month. Sometimes having one lead track that is the strongest track that you have is what you need to focus on and put a little campaign around. Amazing Radio also has an uploader, amazingtunes.com, so get yourself on there and upload your music there. And every show, every presenter on the station listens to the uploader, so it's well worth checking it out. XS Manchester, for instance, also has a facility to upload your music as a new artist. So wherever it is that you're wanting to get your music played, go and find and search out all the uploaders that you can send your music to for free. That doesn't cost you anything. Third tip, do your homework. So there's lots of radio stations out there, community radio stations, hospital radio stations, student radio stations, commercial radio stations, and of course the public radio stations, national and local. If you want to get your songs played on any of those stations, do your homework, see what else other DJs are playing, and if they're playing artists like your music or similar to the vibe that you've got, reach out to them, ask them personally how they like to receive their music. I will say, if you're going to contact DJs on social media, just bear in mind that they get so many messages that your message will get lost. So what it's best to do if you're contacting people on social media is to say, how do you prefer to receive your music? They will come back and tell you an email address or send me a link or something like that. However it is they prefer to get it, because you just want to make sure that your email is read and your music is heard. So always do the polite thing, ask the question, and then tailor your approaches to the stations and the DJs that you think get the vibe of your music more than anybody else. And that's basically what a plugger will do. So, you know, make sure you can do that homework yourself. The internet has a plentiful supply of information. Fourth, use your own networks. You will have people that you know on the local music scene already, other artists or other musical organisations. Ask their advice. Ask them who they got success with. Do homework over other artists that have a similar vibe to you. Maybe you're a post-punk artist, or maybe you're a singer-songwriter. Reach out to those people that you respect and see where they're getting airplay, or maybe just keep an eye on their socials and see where they're getting airplay, and then reach out to those people too. And also, finally, there is the option to use a radio plugger. Obviously, it does cost money to use a radio plugger, but the benefits that you get with a radio plugger are that they kind of know where to pitch your music. But that, you know, to me, if you were going to spend money on a radio plugger over production, you need to be at a certain level to really gain the benefit from that. If you're new and you're starting out, really have a think about spending money on the basic things to get the sound right and to get the interest behind you as an artist, I would say. But down the line, there is a place for a radio plugger, and it can make a huge difference. It can make no difference at all, but sometimes that is down to the quality of the music. So focus on the quality of the the songwriting and the quality of the recording. And also giving a shout out, there's other blogs and websites and stuff like that. I know it's not technically radio, but they can feed through to radio. So for instance, things like Tom Robinson's Fresh on the Net. If you get in the fresh faves, you might get a play on Tom Robinson's 6 Music Introducing mixtape. That is my 5 tips for getting radio play on LDTV. I'm Michelle Zenner. Thank you. Bye.
A quick reminder that this episode is all in aid of help musicians. If you are able to donate, please do so. Back in March, we were meant to be hosting an In Conversation event with 2 special guests. While waiting to reschedule that, they've both kindly agreed to get involved with LDTV. First up is Charlotte Gunn, journalist and former editor of The NME. I spoke to her about how artists can get noticed by the likes of The NME. But first, in these days of clickbait and social media, I wanted to ask her, is quality journalism still finding its voice?
Absolutely, and I have a belief of it existing online as well, but you're right, it's you know, there are so many people, well, anybody can publish stuff online, so it's hard to make the good things cut through, but you know, Google has always said the way it prioritizes content is by quality metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it hasn't always said that. That's been a big change, I would say, in the last 5 years. But so if you know, the principles of good journalism should have the ability to succeed and reach the right people if done online. But yeah, I mean, look at the elections, like the amount of crap being published that people read and believe, and yeah, it's a difficult landscape to navigate, but it's about hiring good people who care about what they do and can string a sentence together, and then you're already doing something that 90% of the people publishing stuff online aren't doing. So
I guess while I had you as well, you know, kind of on behalf of maybe emerging bands and a lot of the bands we work with, you know, a question they'll probably often ask themselves is how do they get the attention of someone like you, you know? And I guess it's quite a broad question really, but have you kind of got any tips or any kind of guidance as to how a band who's kind of coming through who feels like that they should be getting noticed by the NME or by your new website or whoever,
yeah,
they can really make an impact on someone like yourself?
I think, yeah, a few things. One, very basic, just kind of formatting an email, like include a picture, include a video link if you have one. It's really handy if you, although a lot of bands are loath to do it, say sort of, you sound a bit like this band who is already established, just so at a glance you can get an idea about what they're about. That's, yeah, kind of basic. Honestly, a lot of stuff comes through PRs to NME, but there are obviously still people who are going out there looking for other side acts. The new music desk is one person there, so it is hard to get their attention. But so, yeah, I think as well it's important before you start promoting yourself to places like that, just make sure that you've got all your stuff sorted out. So, you know, if you've got one single, you know when the next single's going to be on Spotify, and you just got a bit of a campaign plan rather than you get in touch and someone really likes it and then they're like, okay, what's coming next? And I mean, that's the worst position to be in, for you to just go, oh, I'm not really sure. So just be ready and send as much detail as you can, not as an attachment, just in an email. And just, I don't know, perseverance. And but to be honest, you know, bands, obviously a feature in somewhere like NME does still do wonders, and it is really important, but focusing on building your own socials and using the community that you're already a part of to help promote your work and promote each other's work is also like really valuable. So if from the off you're not getting noticed by these places, there's still so much you can do yourself to and you know, with your peers to help get you noticed. I think in grime, particularly, everyone's just better at supporting each other, more so though I think than in indie music and like guitar music. So I like, you know, jump on each other's tracks and shout each other out and just form a little network of people who yeah, just big each other up all the time, and that will get you far.
Yeah, it feels like there's some truth in that actually, because you know, if there's 3 or 4 or 5 bands from a town or something, or you know, collectively they're going to make more of a noise, and then those kind of slightly bigger publications who are maybe looking for like a story more than a song,
yes,
will jump on that then. So I think that's good advice. I think that's good.
That's definitely true as well about the story, because you know, writing a piece about a band nobody's heard of really is quite a hard sell. But if you can package that up and do a bit of the work for them about like, we're all from Wakefield and there's a thing going on here that you should know about, then instantly it's more appealing because because you've sort of done half the job for them, really. Yeah,
cool, fantastic. That's great. I mean, I was going to ask you what your plans for the future are, but you've kind of given me a spoiler anyway.
Yeah, well, it's called the 45. I think it might be ready actually by the time this goes out. So check it out. Yeah, it's a new music publication, but it's created by an all-female team, and yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Next up is journalist John Robb, founder of Louder Than War.
About 8 years ago, I started the website Louder Than War. I've been a music writer for about 25 years. In fact, longer. I started in the punk fanzine days, and then drifted onto the music press, where I was the main freelance writer for Sounds, doing pieces, the first piece, in fact, to Nirvana, the early Stone Roses Manchester scene, all that kind of stuff. In those days, the papers were weekly, music media moved in 7-day blocks, everything was slow. There's a lot less bands. John Peel and the music press was the main conduit for a new guitar-based band. Sometimes journeys and adventures into other styles of music. When the internet came in initially, I was the first person I knew who had an email address. There was no one to email. Then the website started appearing. That was fascinating. I started writing for playlouder.com, a very early music website. And then I moved on to the Quietus. But I was bombarding them with far too many ideas. I felt sorry for them, they felt sorry for me, and helped me set up Louder Than War, which is a website for people who love music to write about what they want. There is no editorial control. I think music nowadays is fractured. There are scenes, but they overlap. There is no central point. There's no band dominating the culture. It's a bricolage of ideas, styles and sounds, and I like it that way. On the other hand, as a writer, it makes it almost impossible to keep up. I think this is something that's important for young bands to take on board. There's about, every week I'd imagine there's 500 pretty good new bands appearing in this country. I think there's more talent out there than ever before. It's easier to access music and make music. This is a good thing. It's also a bad thing, because it means it's impossible to listen to it all. It's impossible to get a picture of it all. All you could do is keep sending the stuff out there politely, hoping that somebody gets a minute to actually listen to it. I apologise if I can't listen to stuff. I just can't. There's just way too much. I try and dip in and dip out. But once you listen to about 20 new bands in a row, you lose all sense of any judgment. My main currency, before the virus ever turned up, was live music. I would go to a lot of gigs, speak to a lot of people, hang out with a lot of people. If something was happening out there, you sort of tend to hear about it. I can't claim to catch everything. I can't claim to hear everything. But we did filter a lot of stuff first and early on. As a musician, I know how tough it is when you get ignored. I know how difficult it is when you're stuck on the outside looking in. For God's sake, I grew up in Blackpool. You couldn't get any less hip than that in the 70s. I know it's a difficult process. But if you keep trying, at some point, maybe you will get the rewards that are due to you. But music's never been a fair playing field. Some of the greatest bands ever, who I have lists of and records hereby, are unheard of outside about 100 people. It's a cruel and unforgiving business. but that should never ever stint or stop your creativity. You're driven by yourself. You do not need any permission to create. You also do not need any permission to be told that you are good or bad at what you're doing. I know I have a responsibility as a writer, and somebody can get stuff into a slightly higher level of culture discourse. But I know, as I explained before, it's too much of a task nowadays to keep up with every single thing. I guess what we are is a filtering process, probably less important now than we used to be. We certainly don't get paid very much, if at all. It's more like being in a band. It's a hobby. It's a great hobby. People should get paid, but there's no money out there. So that's my summation of the music media in the early 21st century.
My next chat is with friend of the festival, Chris Madden, a counselling psychotherapist who's worked in the music industry for over 20 years. He's a man with many proverbial hats, but one of them is working at Backstage Academy with its students. I started by asking him about the effect it had had on them.
I mean, I know graduates who've lost 25, 30 grand's worth of work.
Wow.
Over the kind of summer and up to the end of the year. I mean, absolutely devastating loss when you spent 3 years working towards this point. You're just about to graduate, and all your work goes.
That's a big thing, isn't it? For Backstage Academy, that's a big thing, because so many of the students just it didn't happen. I didn't finish my degree and jump into a career in TV and radio, but those students do, don't they? They literally finish and they're out there on the festival circuit earning
absolutely.
And like you said, they'll planned around that, won't they, as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really challenging at the moment, and I think it's going to continue to be challenging for quite a while yet.
If there is anyone watching this who's maybe not at that absolute crisis level, but is having some kind of mental health issues, kind of reflecting on where they're at and struggling with that, is there anything that you'd like to signpost, whether it's an official body or like a technique or a book or anything?
Yeah, sure. Well, okay. So first off, as you know, as we were discussing earlier, over the last 8 weeks, I've been doing a thing on Radio Leeds, and what I've done is I've updated my website every week with the stuff we've talked about and links. So there's 8 weeks worth of links to organisations. So organisations like Anxiety UK, Mental Health Foundation, Mind, Samaritans, and then kind of more music specific things like HM UK, Help Musicians UK, Music Support, both really brilliant organisations offering services, offering support services, telephone lines to people who work in the music sector. If you go on my website, chrismaddentherapy.com, there's a massive list of resources there. Right. But here's the thing: they all pretty much say the same thing, because what they're doing is they're offering tips and advice, and honestly, Dean, the tips and advice are the same. That's pretty much for all of them. Get a routine going. Make sure you've got a routine. Mindful meditation is one thing that comes up and on pretty much everyone. So and there are some amazing apps. I've been using an app with my daughter called Smiling Mind. It's a free app. I think it's like one of Australia's biggest downloaded apps. But it's a really, really brilliant app, and it's for all ages. So they do children's ones, they do adult ones. I think actually that they're doing a month-long thing right throughout June, and it's free. So there's that mindfulness is a big one. Making sure that you create a space or environment that is comfortable. So if your room is messy, tidy it up, and it will make you feel better. I mean, that might work. It might not. talk and connect to people. You know, that is so vital. It's really, you know, I'm really appreciating the fact that you asked me to get involved in this, because more than anything, it's really nice talking to you, and it's really nice.
Yeah.
It's really nice doing this.
Yeah.
You know, even though it's not the same as us getting together in Wakefield and having a brew, it's the next best thing, because I feel like I'm connecting and I'm communicating, and we can't undervalue that.
I think though, in a way as well, sorry to butt in, but you know, as an example, me and you, we do try and meet up, but the reality of our lives is that it's really hard. But actually, we're a little bit, although we're busy, we're a little bit more available now. And just to catch up for 20 minutes via a Zoom conversation is actually a little bit more realistic, and
it's brilliant.
So
it's brilliant.
It's really good, and people should be doing that more.
From the perspective of neuroscience, okay, there's a couple of things here that are really worth noting. What it does is it releases, when we're doing this, it releases a hormone called oxytocin. And what oxytocin was, when it was first recognized, it was recognized as being a really, really powerful hormone, a connective hormone between mothers and babies. Mm-hmm. You know, it's that thing of you know, I can feel a rush of it now, you know, and it's a physical rush in being able to communicate with you in this way. I can see you connecting, you know, I feel connected to you. You know, we've known each other a few years. I always enjoy seeing you. We have, you know, I always really enjoy our conversations. They're always full of ideas. They're full of warmth. I mean, for me anyway, you know, I'm not going to speak. They're full of, from my perspective, they're full of warmth, and something is definitely happening. I think there is something happening. It's a hormone called oxytocin, and that makes me feel connected.
I do always enjoy talking to Chris, and I found this experience of doing LDTV, just having these Zoom conversations face to face, really helpful. So if you can, I'd follow his advice and make sure you're connecting with people. Next up is Paul from the Association of Independent Festivals, of which Long Division's a member. As you can imagine, he's very busy right now, so I asked him what he's been up to.
You know, a lot of it is grappling with potential widespread redundancies across the sector, illustrating that to government. Like we ran an impact survey that estimated 59% redundancies between September this year and February next year. So the effects have been profound and far-reaching, and obviously it's not just about the job losses, but the impact that then has on those businesses and festivals, and how it inhibits them potentially from running events next year. So yeah, I mean, you keep hearing the phrase survival mode. I think it's certainly applicable to the festival sector. People had so much in sunk costs, you know, 375,000 in average sunk costs at the beginning of March. So when this started to unfold in the UK, and you'll also be well aware that the vast majority of UK festivals were not insured with regard to this. 98.5% didn't have that communicable disease cover because you didn't really have a rationale to have that.
What would you say, like, are the biggest threats to live music and festivals? Is it the kind of resilience of those organisations? Is it them surviving? Is that the biggest threat, or is there something else we need to be worried about?
Yeah, I think it is. On a really basic level, it's survival. I mean, 92% of members have said that their businesses are at risk under potential refund requests. At the risk of stating the obvious, it's about so much more than the lineup. You know, people are buying into the identity of a festival. They've got quite a close relationship with that. And I think they do understand that these are small, independent businesses.
What do you feel kind of needs to change over the coming months? What are we aiming to change? Is it to get more clarity from the government, or more guidance, or find examples from further afield around Europe? What do we need to do to kind of change this current situation of, well, this unknown situation where it's very difficult to progress things?
When you look around at other governments, they have offered timelines and more certainty around organised gatherings. I don't like the term mass gatherings, which I think we might have talked about before, really. But what festivals provide are, organised, ticketed experiences, and that mass gatherings has just always conjured up something a little more potentially chaotic to my mind, perhaps non-ticketed events. And I think language is important. But, when you look at Germany, for example, they'd categorically said no festivals until the end of August. France had done a similar thing till mid-July. Now, at least there can be some element of planning around that. And we haven't had any of those sort of high-level guidance or timelines from the UK government. I think it's been more of a sort of nudge strategy, letting us know what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, which I think might work for certain areas of the economy, but certainly for festivals, it's not. You can't, you'd be able to completely relate to this. You can't make the decision to postpone your event or reschedule it to next year the month before. So you can't do it on the basis of a rolling ban. And this has always been our point, really, from the very first step when the Prime Minister came out and said, oh, we're not supporting large gatherings with emergency services. It's like essentially you're rendering them incapable of taking place, because without that support and those services, and I'm certainly not saying that it shouldn't be diverted elsewhere under the circumstances, completely agree that it should. But without that, you can't fulfill your licensing objectives around public safety. So why not just ban those gatherings? So there was a lot of initial confusion around that. And I think government needs to work closer with industry. I think, publishing their reopening strategy and it being a 60-page document that doesn't mention large organised gatherings at all. But I think above all else, we're going to need an approach that is industry-led but government-endorsed. And I'm hoping that will be the sort of vehicle through these task forces. I don't think we're asking government to get involved in the details, nor should they. But if we have just some high-level idea of the parameters that we need to work within, then we can start to plan. I think without that, it's incredibly difficult to plan. It's incredibly difficult to see how you would, put on any sort of festival or large-scale music event under social distancing conditions. That just seems unenforceable, and the kind of not only the management and safety issues, but the economic issues around that. You look elsewhere, and you look at venues reopening in Spain at 30% capacity, and you think, how's that viable for any venue or festival? So I think there has to be a willingness to work within parameters, and it's not just going to be business as usual. Things are going to operationally change.
I guess finally, what can audiences do to support festivals now? Is it just simply a case of supporting any campaigns they've got on social media and stuff like that? Is that quite important, do you think, at this time?
I think so, yeah. Outside, I think the single thing you can do if you have a ticket, roll it over to next year. If you can, if you're in the situation where you can, and that will greatly help these businesses to, cash flow and survive to next year.
Our penultimate check-in is with Rhubarb Design House. I just want to give them a quick shout out for helping put LDTV together. As some bands out there might have time right now to reflect, they've put a short guide together to help you find the right image and brand for your band.
Hi folks, I'm Alex.
And I'm James.
And we're the founders of Rhubarb Design House.
Rhubarb Design House is a design studio in Wakefield and specialises in graphic design in the creative industry. Take a look at some of our work from the last 12 months. Lockdown has given us some extra time and opportunity to brush up on our own branding. which gave us the idea to share our key tips on how musicians can harness the power of their branding, making it work for them and not against.
Our first tip, understand what your brand is. Most people, when they think of branding, will say it's your logo or it's your website. They might even say it's the colours and fonts that you use. Whilst all that's true, your branding is so much more. It's your identity. And for a musician, how you sound, how you dress, your band name, how you talk to fans, and the images on your album artwork, they're all part of your branding. Even your social media is a massive part of your brand. The comments you post, the way you write to people, when you reply to comments, how often you reply to comments. This all contributes to how you are perceived by others, and that perception fundamentally is your brand. So as an individual artist or a band, write down everything you think forms part of your brand, and then you can start to pick it apart, analyse it, and discover what makes your brand.
Our second tip, getting your tone of voice right. So now that we understand what our brand is, we need to make sure that each part of it is speaking the same language. You need to choose an anchor point, and that should be your music style. If you have a clear style of music, then everything else in your branding needs to resonate with that. For example, let's look at the branding of indie rock band Arcade Fire. Much of their album artwork has a DIY, handmade aesthetic, and this reflects the music, where band members often chop and change between instruments and are always looking to experiment with new sounds with each release. They've even worn papier-mâché heads on stage. Despite their global success and huge following, they have a very down-to-earth and inclusive feel, highlighted by their recent boxing ring style, open staging, and carnival processions through the streets.
Our third and final tip, creating your branding. Now it's time to get to work on creating your style. There are tons of free resources available online. Google Fonts contains a vast array of open source fonts which are free to use, and if you're struggling for imagery, there are websites such as Unsplash and Pexels that have lots of great photography all free to download. Make sure that everything works together. For example, does your font choice make you look too austere or serious? If so, try going for something with a bit more flair and character. Try something hand-drawn if you feel a digital approach isn't working. If your music is experimental, maybe some visual experimentation might work for your album cover. So try cutting out random shapes, changing colours and distorting images. As long as it all ties into who you are and what you do, you won't go far wrong. Remember that branding is fluid, and as your music evolves, allow your branding to grow alongside it. Branding often sounds very corporate, but really it's all about communication and a chance to put your own stamp on things. Just have fun with it.
Thanks so much for watching, and thanks to everyone who contributed their time and shared their thoughts. These are tricky times. We all need to work hard together to make sure that live music and culture survives. Please do look out for the other LD TV episodes that are streaming over the weekend, or catch up at a later date through our YouTube and Facebook. I'll leave you with my conversation with Whiskas from Music Leeds. I asked him what he felt was the biggest threat facing live music right now.
Well, the biggest threat is the government absolutely drops everyone in it in the autumn. You know, at the minute, kind of, you know, everyone's sort of being treated the same way. You know, like businesses, industry, the furloughing and things like that. And we're starting to hear that, you know, there's this expectation that businesses should contribute to wages from summer, from a couple of months' time or whatever. And that's in line with the fact that, you know, we're already seeing a few places, like commercial places, like cafes or whatever, starting to reopen, which will happen more, I guess, when the schools go back next month and so on. And what is it, the expectation that cafes and restaurants can maybe be open in July? You know, live music is not covered in any of that. Like proper pubs and, you know, a pub experience has not been mentioned in any of that. That's way down the line. And the government's response from some of the briefings that I've kind of heard is that, because, you know, we're you know, within the sort of national networks that we're part of, you know, is this idea that, you know, the government have been keen to not do sector specific responses. And actually what I've heard quoted is, you know, is because of their attitude to, like, the airlines, for example. You know, we're talking about the live music sector and they're telling the airlines, well, we're not going to bail you out. And the scary thing is if they say that about the live music sector. And so it's completely left up to us, you know, us in the music, you know, come the autumn, if we want to run a music festival, that's up to us, but we've got to do it in a socially, a health responsible way. And if it and if you can only sell so many tickets, then that's you've got to try and find a way to work around that, which is impossible.
If you feel that maybe like autumn time is a bit of a crunch point for the music industry that we're just talking about, like what needs to change from the path we're on now? What needs to change in your opinion, and how can we maybe go about facilitating that, making that happen?
I think we're going to have to see in August. That is like 3 months. Like by the end of August, we're going to have to know like what the next step of support is when it comes to things like the business rates relief grants. Yeah. That was a really good stopgap, I think, for a lot of people. But that stopgap will have way expired by the end of August. And like you say, by the end of August, we're probably going to know if things, like how much things need to be supported through till Christmas and beyond. I think, although obviously everything's changing all the time. Yeah. And I think again, like by the end of August, the government's plan is to like have a lot of stuff be able to function as normally as possible. That as possible is the biggest caveat in the world. Yeah. So by then you'll know. I think you'll know if live music events can restart and stuff. And I've said a few times, I think there's a few things will lead on that, like sport. Like if something like the Premier League being a much bigger thing, and even on a grassroots level, if you're able to see people like like a five-a-side football ground reopen, it'll give you a clue as to where the rehearsal rooms can, what they might need to reopen and so on. And again, crowd management with the bigger events as well. So those will grab the headlines and lead the way a little bit. There's a global pandemic out there. One good way to save lives would be to, remove the risk of lots of people getting together. But we're already seeing that that's not a priority for the government. Mm-hmm. The priority is to balance the loss of life with the economy running. And so there's going to be compromises. We are allowed to engage in activity that puts public health at risk. That's fact. The whole fact of schools going back is, it's a risk worth taking. And so when that's going to get put on the live music sector at some point in 3 months is terrifying for anyone involved in live events, really.
Just as a kind of final thing, I wanted to just give you opportunity to like signpost anywhere that like we said, artists or professionals or anyone within the industry, just like useful places they could look for either for advice or funding, or maybe a social media accounts they should be following, anything like that would help people aside of Music Leeds, of course. Well,
no, I mean I have to really plug what we're doing, really, because when the outbreak happened and lockdown happened, we had to think about like what we were going to do and how useful we could be, and I think I was really keen that we didn't sort of add to the noise, and we weren't trying to do loads of stuff. I mean, I've mentioned we've done a couple of live streams, but we haven't looked to do lots of online events. We don't want to take attention away from other people who are doing that, and we're sort of funded to support the sector, not sort of replace what they're doing. Yeah. So we've done bits to signpost to highlight artists, but other than that, we've tried to signpost. So when it first happened, we spent a lot of time building up our resources. So on our website, we have a page with lots of resources, and we've signposted some. We've had big organisations come to our webpage and find useful things to do, like guides to live streaming, financial support, and loads of different things, like whether you're an artist or a creative, or guides to self-employment. So there's a really good list on our website there, and we've also tried to support all the fundraising initiatives of mainly local venues. So there's a list there, and if we've missed anything, please let us know. We'll really highlight it. And also keep on with all the funding rounds that are opening. So most of the emergency rounds have now closed, but there's still a kind of a stream of different kind of creativity based ones. So yeah, I mean, like there's a number of sites. Obviously, we mentioned people like Help Musicians and so on, and Musicians Union have some really good resources. But we have been trying to collate it all, and in a way that's relevant to West Yorkshire.